All right, well, hey, thanks for showing up. My name's Andrew Hanson, and I gave this talk a couple weeks ago. We're going to give it again. This is about embracing the AI-powered developer life, or how to become a better programmer by using AI, right? So, little different crowd here, right? You guys are probably, learning how to program, right? How many have heard about, AI is going to kill developer jobs, right? So I've been doing this for like 25 years. I've been a programmer. A little bit about me, for some of you who don't know me. I've been a software developer for 20-some years, 25 years actually. Been through a couple of cycles of this is going to kill all developer jobs, and why I think this is definitely significant. We're going to look about how we can not be scared of AI, but how we can use it to actually be better. So in this talk, we're going to go through a little things. I've been doing this a long time. So we're gonna have a little like get off my grass. I'm gonna be an old man a couple of times, right? Like, back in my day, and we're gonna hear a lot of back in my day. We did this, we did that. We talked about this. I'll try not to be too grumpy, but just to give you a little bit of background on what you're gonna see. But let's jump into it. What made me really dive into this? I've been using Copilot, I've been using autocompletes, I've been using like everything to speed up my code for decades, right? Anything I can find. Been using Copilot and AI to generate code for the last couple of years, right? Since Copilot came out and ChatGPT, once you could throw code at it. How many people use ChatGPT for your projects here at school? Jake's like, no, don't do it. And everybody's like, no, I didn't. Yeah, you did. So yeah, it started by basically replacing Google search, right? Like, hey, instead of going to Google and getting directed to a blog or Stack Overflow, ChatGPT is going to summarize that for me and give me some things. But lately, I've been hearing this a lot more, right? So, hey, these jobs won't exist in 24 months, right? And that's got us a little disheartening. I've been doing this for 25 years. Am I going to still have a job? Am I going to have to learn how to plumb? I don't have time to create a new career. How many people here is like coding their like second career? Like you coming from something else? So a couple, right? So, and that's gonna be good, we'll get into that. But basically, this is really what got me thinking. How do we not sit around and be anxious and be scared that our job's going away in 24 months? But also, how do we deal with some of these business people, and we'll talk into these faces here in a minute on this screen, that we're going to encounter as we're interviewing, as we're trying to build software, as we're working inside companies who hear this and go, why do I need to pay a developer? Why do I need to do this? I can just go do it in XYZ. You have to know how to use it. So how can we answer those questions and become better developers by understanding AI? So I want to start to kind of set the scene for the rest of my talk about how we can embrace AI and what we're up against by taking this short podcast clip. So does anybody recognize any of these people? All right. So, the robot in there, that's not a real person. That's actually just marketing. So like that guy hasn't came yet, but he's the guy coming to take our jobs, I guess. You've got this like, on the left here, you've got Brett Weinstein. He's like a former college professor in evolutionary biology. He's like the humanist. He's like really scared about what AI is going to do to people. You've got the entrepreneur who believes that AI is going to just make everybody rich, or at least him, and that everybody should just be like him and start a business. We'll talk about that. On the far, the guy, the Lex Luthor-looking guy, who, and again, I say that probably because for part of us who are learning to code, his company is going to look a little bit like the dark side, right? Like the enemy. He is the founder of Replit, right? And he did some amazing stuff. As a developer, you got to love what he built, but we're going to really look at that. At the end is Steve Bartlett. He's created software companies, entrepreneur, hosts a podcast, kind of that. Created a bunch of businesses. He's on the European version of Shark Tank called Dragon's Den, right? It's like a UK version, right? So entrepreneur started a bunch of companies into tech, into marketing, and all that, right? So it's a deeper podcast, but I took a short clip of it that I want us to listen to real quick.
For anyone that doesn't know, Replit is a piece of software that allows you to create.
Hang on. But it didn't go straight to PowerPoint. Give me a second. So this is why the bots are going to take my job, because I don't even know how to run PowerPoint. All right, here we go.
For anyone that doesn't know, Replit is a piece of software that allows you to create software. and pretty much any software you want. So someone like me with absolutely no coding skills was able to build a website, build in Stripe, take payment, integrate AI into my website, add Google login to the front of my website, and do it within minutes. I then got the piece of software that I had built with no coding skills, sent it to my friends, and one of my friends put his credit card in and paid. So I just launched a SaaS company with no coding skills. For anyone that doesn't know,
Right, so you catch that last one, right? What do you say? I just launched a SaaS company with no coding skills, and if I would have taken the clip a little bit quicker, in minutes, right? So how long did it take you guys to finish like your end of class project?
Many minutes.
Many minutes, right? And so now you've got these people that are all over the internet, but also a CEO who says, I created a SaaS company, right? And I launched it in minutes. And what's the company that he made? If you drill into the podcast, it's a company that delivers like custom water, right? So you can go on and buy this like special water and get it delivered to you, right? Again, for him, it wasn't about what he was selling. It was about I can put up a website, I can create it from scratch, in his mind, and launch it, right? And so to me, that's what's scary, right? If anybody comes from like a corporate background, right, work with business types. If not, you'll run into people, hey, why do I need to code? I can do X, Y, Z, right? So now the expectation is I can build a SaaS in minutes, right? That's what the promise of AI is. And how do we as developers like approach that? So part of it's just knowing what we're up against. So after seeing that, I was like, okay, well, what actually happened, right? Because again, I've been around this a long time, right? I remember when I started developing software in the 90s, last century, right? In the 1900s, when I was developing software, we were going, object-oriented programming was big. And one of the first languages I learned was COBOL, right? COBOL stood for Common Business Language, something, 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 right? But the idea when they developed was, well, we can just speak like we're a business owner and develop software, and we don't have to write assembly language and be all nerdy, right? And then we had objects, and the whole plan was they want to be able to take object-oriented programming and sit down with the business, and they describe your business, and boom, we can like auto-generate these things and really easily create software, right? And that happened. And then the dot-com boom happened, and HTML, if you could spell HTML, you could make money building web pages, right? And it was great, and then it busted, and we didn't need developers. But part of the promise of the dot-com boom was, well, you don't need to be a programmer anymore because the internet makes everybody a programmer, and we don't need all this stuff. Dot-com boom happened, all that died, and went deep engineering. 3 years later, right, came an outsourcing boom. Little history here, right? I don't have slides for it, but hey, you know what? We don't need US developers. You guys are too expensive and hard to maintain, and honestly, you're just not smart enough. So we're gonna outsource everything to India because I can hire 100 guys for what I'm paying 3 guys here, right? Boom, you have to navigate that, right? And if you've worked right now, since then, that happened. And then what happened then? Okay, well, that happened for a while, and we had to manage that, and I survived through a couple year layoffs by learning how to work with the outsourced team, right? So instead of trying to compete with them, right, I was inside large companies at Micron at the time, right? I said, okay, well, I still want to develop software, but I'm going to learn how to work with an Indian team and manage it and make that either figure out that it's not going to work or make it effective for my team. And then what happened after that? Again, more timelines. Steve Jobs released the iPhone. Boom, software developers are cool again because we got to figure out how to develop software for all these phones, right? And then SaaS companies start, and you can create SaaS companies, right? And then we had, on a technical level, what I'm going to call like the front end evolution, right? You end up having like React and SPA applications, and Node came out, and JavaScript came out, and like all this stuff kind of blew up, and now you're creating all these SaaS companies. But it was really easy because you had these frameworks and these tools, everything from Ruby on Rails, these frameworks, or Node.js, like the, what's that stack called? The mean stack, right? That just let you, boom, stand stuff up, right? SaaS happened, right? The clouds happened. Now you can not only build it, you can deploy it in minutes, right? And so everything stacks, and all that was supposed to get rid of developers and let these business guys just build the fun stuff they want without communicating with the developer. And now we're at the next iteration, which is AI. I think this is the biggest one I've ever seen. It's going to change how we do stuff, right? And it's going to enable people like Steve Bartlett to create SaaS companies without talking to developers, right? but we're going to look at kind of what does that look like? What's he actually saying when he says, I built a SaaS application in minutes? What's underneath that? What's the opportunity we have as developers to learn and take advantage of that? But also, how are we going to enjoy it, right? And actually live. Okay, here's the TLDR of where I'm going to go. This is my thesis for how to embrace AI, what's going to happen, how AI is going to affect us as software developers. And I'm sure other people are saying this. This is my quick and dirty. If you're solving business problems and you're using software to do it, there's always going to be a place for you, right? But whereas 25 years ago, I was writing linked list implementations and like very low-level C++ code, right? We had a CGI application that took in raw HTTP requests and we templated it, right? Okay, but we were solving business problems, right? Now I'm going to use AI to do that, right? AI is going to make me quicker at solving business problems, and I'm going to leverage that in different ways as a developer. I'm going to solve business problems, or I'm going to go into deep science and engineering, right? If you have looked at what's happening behind the scenes in deep computer science, like it's still crazy. Quantum computing, what it takes to run these large language models and connect them together and create agents and continue to create stuff on the back end that makes all this stuff go, or data science, right? Which is, again, a form of AI, in my opinion, roughly. But the deep science and engineering is not going away, right? Solving business problem isn't going away. Being a coder who like, well, I don't really understand your business, and I don't understand deep science, but if you tell me the problem and like how you want the UI built, I can go into React and I can code it for you and type everything out and test it, right? AI is coming for that, and we're going to see how it's coming for that. Or it's going to shrink, right? If I'm solving this, I'm still going to do that, but that's going to get a lot smaller. I'm not just going to do this. I have to be on one side or the other. Or, right, and you guys are on the opposite side of this, probably in this room, right? Some people are doing this, at like at a user group, maybe we're at the other one, where some of us always want to quit programming every 5 years and start a farm, which we actually had a guy do. And after hearing his stories about the farm, it's not a good idea. Or you can forget it and start a trade, right? So my whole life this last year, in fact, my whole morning this week was we had some water damage. We had a small little leak in the water supply line to my fridge in January, right? Which then resulted in about a 5x5 section of the wood floor in my kitchen being removed to make sure that there was no mold growing, right? And of course, underneath my wood floor, I have an old house. They had 2 layers of linoleum that they had to test and pull. I've probably seen, they had that. So I've had plumbers come out. I've had carpenters. I've had, disaster mitigation specialists. I've had hardwood flooring people, right? So I live in the North End. My house is 100 years old. People who specialize in like old hardwood, and they're there like a couple times a week for a little leak, right? That we're still working on, right? So if AI is scary, they're not taking away those jobs. It's kind of switched. I remember 15 years ago, it was, oh, hey, you lost your trade job, let's go learn to code. And now the coders are like, hey, maybe I should learn how to weld. Which my son welds. I couldn't do any of that. That's not an option for me, not only because I'm old, but because I'm just not very good at that, right? Personal story, coming out of high school, I joined the Air Force. Longer story about why, but I remember sitting down with the recruiter, and my whole goal was like, I'm going to join the Air Force. I'm going to backdoor. I'm going to I had this big career plan. And he was like, hey, so, okay, well, have you ever thought about being a programmer? I'm like, no, but I'm just going to be enlisted for a little while, and then I'm going to become an officer and go to school. And he's like, great. If you're a programmer, I get a bonus, and it'll look good. It'll look good on your resume. And besides, when you took your ASVAB test, which is the test you take to join the military, there's a lot of things you can do. You scored really well. But the one thing we won't let you do is we're not going to let you touch the planes. Your mechanical scores were terrible. Anything that is actually touching the planes, you can't do that. I was so far away from the planes. I spent 4 years at an Air Force base without a runway, right? It hadn't had a plane land there since World War II, right? And it was a training base. So that's not an option for me. So I got to figure this out and how to make it fun. And I think it really is. Okay, so before we dive in, we're going to look at, I talked about this a little bit, right? Here are kind of the biggest next of many, right? Here's some of the things that we've had. So I went a little out of order. But everything from assembly language, I learned that in tech school, COBOL. Huge languages, right? No code, right? The cloud, SaaS, no code, self-service, right? Vibe coding, right? That's the big thing. Who knows what vibe coding is now? That's what we're really going to do. This isn't presentation on vibe coding, but that's next. And who's ever worked with a business guy who loves Excel? Right? So if you take your business guy who can like really make Excel sing and loves Excel, they're gonna love this. Because now they can go and not only create Excel, they can actually go and like create an application and deploy it, right? And talk to it and just tweak it. Now, are they worried about how it's gonna be maintained, how it's gonna scale, how it's gonna, no, right? Platforms like Lovable, like Replit are gonna try to take care of that. But your Excel guys love the vibe coding, right? I have a friend who was a consultant for McKinsey, right? Big business guy, works as some executive at St. Luke's and like planning what they're gonna do for the future and how they manage growth and whatever. I've seen some Excel spreadsheets, they're incredibly impressive. And you know, he hit a wall once with where he couldn't do it in Excel anymore. I'm like, well, have you looked at AI? And like, you know, I think Microsoft has something with like their Power BI apps that might be able to do what you want. 2 weeks later, he's like, dude, I created this Power BI app using AI that, you know, means I don't have to hire 3 people, right? And basically, you know, if we looked at it, we're like, it wasn't that big of a program. It was like task assignment and status, right? So, hey, you're assigned a task and you called this person and here was the result and here was the response, right? But instead of calling a programmer to write like a workflow system, right, or figure out how it works in one, he didn't vibe code, right? He ChatGPT, Power BI, ChatGPT, Power BI. Now today, he did that about 2 years ago. Today, he would totally go into a tool like we're gonna see in Replit, right? Hey, I wanna do this, and he would have an application up. Now, it was interesting when he went to deploy it at a hospital, right? He couldn't deploy it anywhere outside of SharePoint, right? So vibe coding wouldn't have worked there. So again, when we talk about business problems, right? In his case, had he vibe coded it, the business problem would have been, how do I take this vibe coded application and bring it into a highly regulated enterprise environment, right? Those problems, I think, are still being solved right now. All right, let's talk a little about AI developer tools. I'm not gonna cover all of them. That's not what I'm trying to do here, but we got ChatGPT. Everybody use ChatGPT? Hopefully all of you, right? GitHub Copilot, right? If you haven't, it's free and is great. Some big ones that are, so Claude is by Anthropic. That's an AI service like ChatGPT. That's really good with code. Cursor, everybody use Cursor, right? So Cursor is like, you guys use VS Code in here? So Cursor is basically a AI-specific implementation of VS Code. It took VS Code, forked it, but then has built in some AI stuff. Also free, but also has some stuff you can buy. Replit, we're gonna look at that. It's an application development platform, right? We're gonna use it for kind of vibe coding. V0 is Vercel's kind of implementation. Somebody use Vercel and what's in there. But basically, if you use like Next.js, React apps, it'll do that. There's a bunch more here, but those are the highlights. And there's more, right? I didn't list OpenAI Codex, which just came out since I initially did this slide deck to general availability. I kind of lumped that under ChatGPT, although it's technically different. Types of AI, right? So we're gonna talk about like 4 different kind of types of AI that we're gonna talk about. We're gonna talk about AI-powered coding assistants. That's GitHub Copilot. That's autocomplete on steroids, right? We're gonna talk about one thing you can do to use AI, and here's where there's a big opportunity for developers, is using AI within the applications we build, right? So maybe it's not that AI is building my application, it's helping me build it, but I'm also leveraging AI in the application I built for image recognition, right? Search, context, right? Generative AI of some sort, right? You're keying into those AI services that are there. So if you key into any other API, we can look at that. Vibe coding, that's our Excel nerd heaven. And AI agents. So we're gonna talk about these a little bit. And then of course, I did 4, but there's N things. There's, you know, if you guys are learning how to code, but in the original, when I gave this talk to the Boise software developers group, of course, they're always like, well, what about this? And I used this yesterday, and I did this, and there's 15 things. Those are the ones we're gonna talk about today. And we're just gonna touch on some things really quick. So who has not used GitHub Copilot? Anybody not seen it? Just one? Okay, so most of you are familiar with it. Basically, it's code completion and in IDE chat, right? So what does that look like? Let me pull up code window here next to my presentation. Yeah. That's fine. No. This part, right? So a couple of interesting things we can do that's new if you haven't used it for a while, right? It has everything from standard code completion, like if I wanted to, let's look at an actual, if I wanted to add a route, right? All that, right? It's basically saying, hey, I think you want to add given your context in your code, you want to add a login route, right? Great. Or we can do inline chat, right? I can ask Copilot, right? I can say, add a post route to log in, right? It'll start thinking about it. And again, this is a terrible prompt, but then it'll go and generate all that code for me, right? Okay, so here's what it thinks is a good login request. Now, as a seasoned software developer, I'm all like, God, the answer from Copilot should be, are you sure you want to add a login as your own route, and not use an identity service, right? But if you were going to, right, somewhere on the internet, right, it found this. And again, this isn't terrible. It's using bcrypt, it's hashing it, right? So I can look at that and go, oh yeah, it looks pretty good, right? So again, I didn't have to type all that code, and that's a terrible prompt, not very descriptive. And I clicked the wrong button. Anyway, did I? No, there it is. No, it just scrolled up on me. Right, so then there's that whole login method that it created for me, right? Now, a couple things that it did that, again, it saved me a lot of typing, but it also went and created some things like, get user by username. That probably doesn't exist. Well, I guess it does exist down here. I don't know why it's red, right? So now I need to go in and figure out why I've got, why some things potentially don't work, right? I have to, if I haven't included the bcrypt package, I'd have to go and include that into my package, right? So if I went and did that, right? But that's Copilot. It's in the IDE. It's going to give me, like here, it's suggesting now a method that says, hey, if you're going to do a login, you probably want a register method, and I didn't see it in your code, right? Oh, tab, great. Yeah, now I got a register method. That's awesome. And again, it's suggesting this get user by username method, which I don't think I have in this code base, right? So again, it's not always there, but it's a good helper, right? It's somebody sitting there creating some code for you that's pretty quick. The one thing I'm going to say this about all AI, and I didn't say this in this last time I gave the presentation, is even if AI generates the code, you were still responsible for it, right? So we can't give up our responsibility to the AI when it comes to delivering solutions. But a lot of this is boilerplate. If you've written off systems, right, yep, that's what I got to do, right? A lot of boring things that it's done for me. So that's Copilot. We also have in the IDEs, I can do it. Basically, I can tie in, basic questions, right? What is the best language for web development? And basically, it's ChatGPT, but inside my IDE. Right? And I don't need it to keep telling me that. It also gives me the option, this is GitHub Copilot, gives me the option to use some different models, right? So I can use GPT, which is your OpenAI sources. I can use Claude, right? I can even tie into Gemini. And some of those will use different API keys, right? Depending on how you license it. And that's the thing with the tools. All the tools and licensing is something I won't get into too much today, but there's a lot of options out there for everything that we do. PowerPoint. All right, so that's a coding assistant, right? It's Power Complete on steroids, autocomplete on steroids. The other thing we can do, and this is really important, is let's use AI services inside our applications, right? So I'm working with, say you're working with a real estate agent and they're getting PDFs from a broker, right? I can take those PDFs and send them to an AI service that OCRs them, reads them, and gives me a summary, right? If we're dealing with data, right, I can send that in. We can do chat bots, we can do search, these are all things that I have done as a professional developer, either implemented into a proof of concept or implemented for a client. I've gotten paid to do this at some level or another, right? Right, where we create a chat bot. Who wants that, right? Hey, let's chat over my help records or something, right? Search, image recognition, right? I can accept images in from my customers, right? Say it's like law enforcement, right? They're taking image of a crash scene, and I can automate that crash scene, right? Or I can take images of a crowd, and I can send it through facial recognition, right? All those things like AI services we can use. Or I can look at an image and I can identify it, right? Oh, hey, in this image, you've got these 3 objects, and then I can pass that into like generative AI to like describe that more, right? Lots of stuff we can do, right? RAG is called resource augmented generation, is that right? Basically, it's a way to do AI. It's a classic implementation if I've got a company with a lot of data, and I basically want ChatGPT, but just over my data. And I want to be able to put some security and some arms around that, right? There's a lot we can do. We've all used AI to generate emails or chat responses, right? You can put that into your own application. So as I'm, filling out a big form, you're like, hey, I can, based on the pictures that you've uploaded, here's probably the description you want to add to your support ticket, right? It can do all your Jira stuff for you. So there's a lot there. Each one has its own documentation and usages. Here's some examples, right? Azure's got them, all the big cloud providers, AWS, OpenAI, Google with Gemini. Like there's a lot of AI services you can use. And there's even more, right? If you guys are really geeky and you want to run them locally, right? You're going to Hugging Face and downloading models. Lots of services we can use on our own. Okay, now we're going to get to the fun piece, right? So we're going to create vibe coding, right? This is what business people mean by AI coding, in my mind. Most of them, right? If it's not a technical business person, when they say, hey, I'm going to go create something with AI, they're talking about vibe coding, right? Again, we've talked about a little bit. It's crack for Excel nerds, right? And it's great, but I also believe there's a part of like what I did as a software developer. I've been an independent consultant since 2009. One service I used to offer to entrepreneurs and the idea people who want to do a startup is, hey, pay me X amount of money and I'll build your proof of concept, right? I'll build your MVP, right? I'll build something you can go around to the VCs and show so they have an idea of what you're doing so that you can raise money, right? I think vibe coding is going to totally pretty much get rid of that, right? Because now that idea guy can go into a tool like Replit, and we're going to look at this, and they can do most of that MVP themselves, right? I think I've had lots of customers do the whole MVP in PowerPoint before, right? They've mocked it out, Figma. There's all these tools that are there, and I think vibe coding is going to finally take care of that business, which I have made money at. But we're also going to look that it is, and here's where we can embrace as a developer. One, it takes away that piece, but if somebody's vibe coding a bunch of proof of concepts and ideas, right? Yes, you can deploy them. Yes, you can run them. But if they're really going to grow and be successful, at some point, it's going to leave that vibe coding. Even now, like anything non-trivial, it's going to leave the vibe coding and it's going to require some more support. Eventually, they're going to want to hand it off, right? And that's where we can come in as developers who understand code. So what we're going to do is I actually wanted to say, okay, well, I watched this thing, right? The Replit founder really scared me, but also really inspired me because I think he built something really cool. But what does he really mean, right? So Steve Bartlett, right? He went and he wrote a SaaS business. Well, can I do a SaaS business in Replit, and how long is it going to take me, right? So I decided I'm going to build, I don't really want to sell water, but I want to sell custom T-shirts. Not that I can make T-shirts. Replit. Right, so let's go ahead and try and make a custom T-shirt application, right? So I went in and I don't see, I'm gonna go all the way back to my history. Here we go. So here was my initial prompt. So I went to Replit. It's free, by the way. So everybody, if you haven't used Replit, right? Like you're kind of at the end of your course where you're learning like the details, but like this weekend, go start a Replit account, take half an hour, right? An hour aside, and try to create whatever project you wrote here. Ask Replit to create it, right? And here was my prompt. And the more detailed your prompt is, the better. So this prompt actually really sucks. I even have like spelling mistakes, which my college professors used to hate me for. I don't know how many times they told me, this would be a good paper if it was actually spelled correctly. Anyway, so I want to create a website to sell custom T-shirts, right? It should display a collection of available T-shirts, allow users to view the shirt details, and add a shirt to their shopping cart. I want to use Stripe to accept payments. Does everyone know what Stripe is? Stripe's like a SaaS for taking credit cards, right? Basically, I get an API key, and then it's got the whole UI, like PayPal, right? That can do the credit card processing for me. So again, right, vibe coding a online store that accepts credit cards wasn't possible 20 years ago because Stripe didn't exist, right? There wasn't tools that I could drop in easily to do it. It was a lot more work. When a user buys the shirt, I want to receive an email so I can package and send out the shirt. So I wanted a couple things. I wanted to say, look, build a website, show me some t-shirts, right? Master detail page, probably something you guys have written. But then I want to integrate into an API to accept credit cards. So that's a third-party SaaS provider, Stripe. And I want to send email. So like, what can you do? How hard, right? Let's go ahead and take a look at what's going on. So of course, you know, the chatbots are very happy to talk to you. They're very confident. I can help you. Let's go, right? And so it went, and this is actually going back in the history. And here's the first thing it created for me off of that prompt, I think. Let's go Replit. It's not showing them. All right, we'll look at the current one. So we'll walk through. So after that, we had a couple different things. Like it's telling me what it's doing. So I did this and I walked away. Right? I was actually working on my day job. I typed this in one window and then Replit went out and basically all these actions. Hey, perfect. Hey, it's now running. You can see it. Here's the stuff that I created. Right? And then I would go and say something. So it would go and create like, hey, you like to add your email credentials? So then it prompted. So it went, did everything it thought it could. Go, hey, you want to add your email credentials? I said, nah, yeah, let's do it. So I added those, right? And then it went and started adding that. And then I went in again and said, hey, can I create an admin dashboard? It said, sure. So now we've got, you know, timelines are kind of off. Then it took some time, created the admin dashboard. Keep going, and then it tells me what it did. Right, here's all these really cool things. Let's see, let me go further. Right, so the first version, we'll go step back a little bit. The first time it created for me, it just hard-coded URLs in the HTML for every t-shirt, right? And so I was like, that's great, but is that complete? No, it looks cool. Looks like I just created a t-shirt store, but it didn't. And then I said, hey, create an admin dashboard with a Postgres backend. It said, sure, it created it for me. Right, so without me touching any code, here's the the t-shirt shop that it created for me. Premium custom t-shirts. It's pulling in a bunch of Unsplash images and telling me that I could put them on t-shirts. It gave them random prices. I can add it to a cart. I can view my cart. I can check out. I can enter card information. And this is all, so it had asked, during that process, it asked for my Stripe keys. So I went over, created a Stripe account. I didn't have one. Created some sandbox keys. This is all in their sandbox, right? Let me go and complete it. So at this point, I still haven't written any code. Boom, there's my order. Done, right? So if I log into Stripe, we would see a transaction where I just had a new card payment, right? It attempted to send an email to me to let me know, and I haven't touched any script yet, right? And I said, that's great, but let's add a login dashboard. So we walk through this login process. There we go. I can walk into my admin dashboard. So that little login stuff I didn't look at. That's something Replit kind of does because I wanted it to be a GitHub login, I believe. So now here's my shirts. I can go in, edit my shirt, change my prices. Right now, here's my $1 shirt. Go back to my store. There's my shirt, right? So all that's done, and I have not written any code at this point, right? So I created a whole backend, a whole dashboard. Now again, I could keep going in there to say, right, there's my detail page, different sizes, colors, and all that. And with setting up my Stripe account, right, with fighting for a while to get it to authenticate with my Gmail credentials for email, which I never solved, by the way, but it got to the point where my credentials in Gmail are just failing. I've got something with security where it wouldn't like it. It took me 1 hour and 22 minutes for what you see here. Right? And that includes like setting up a Postgres database. So when I said add the back end, use Postgres, it goes, oh, great. Oh, I know this other service called Neon Postgres, which is a cloud-hosted version of Postgres, so I don't have to install it, which is connected into Replit. So Replit basically has the bill. We can use Neon for Postgres, and then it would just bill me for it, right? So Replit's been built on top of these other services, right? So it spins up a Postgres instance for me. It created the database schema for me, right? And then deployed it. And then I can click a button in here if I want this to go live, right? And I can deploy it. It'll auto scale, right? It'll tell me how much I want to pay, right? The Replit guy says it costs like $20 a month, but I'm pretty sure those defaults there with 3 VMs was more than $20 a month, right? You know, it doesn't tell me how much. It's trying to tell me I need 4 virtual CPUs and 8 gigabytes of RAM. Do I? I don't know, right? From a business guy, I don't know, right? Those defaults are, and if you do know, this is really high for the app I just showed, unless I'm getting real traction, right? For a POC that one guy's gonna look at to dump in a credit card to see if it works, like, I need 1 CPU. Like, this needs to be way down, right? I could run this whole site, you know, down here somewhere. But anyway, but I don't know that. So again, we talk about where's the opportunity, right? CEO's not gonna know that. He might play with it and ask it. AI is gonna tell him. He could type into ChatGPT, hey, tell me how to, you know, given this app, what should my Replit config be? But it deploys it, right? So has anybody ever like deployed it? You guys deploy applications, right? Deployed a web app to, where do you guys deploy your applications to here? To AWS?
They haven't done it yet.
Okay, right, so again, every application that I currently support, it's a lot more work to deploy the first version than that, right? It just deployed it, and if we go out to this website, anybody can go to this website now. Oh, did I not click that? Am I ahead of myself? Oh, I gotta click deploy.
Got all your environment variables there too?
Sure. It's got them all there listed, but it created all those, right? I didn't tell it to create a single environment. It asked me, hey, you want me to store that? So I provided, as part of this chat, I don't think it'll show you because it's gonna be, I don't wanna leak something, but sometimes in this chat, it would stop and go, hey, it would ask me for my Stripe credentials, and it would put up a little form, and I would go paste my API key in there, or my email, right? And it would create it. So here we are now deploying my custom t-shirt site that I created by just talking. I think if we go through my whole history, let's see, right, here's what it's doing. It created a whole database. But again, all this is it talking to me, right? Only the blue is the stuff where I responded, right? So, okay, so it asked me if I wanted to add my email credentials, and it goes, great. So it added it right here, right? It added 2 secrets for me. And so I filled those in. So that's like the 4th interaction I had with it. 5th interaction, I asked for an admin dashboard where I can log in with Google or GitHub. It said, sweet, right? Kept going. Right, so edited for me. And again, it's making check-ins the whole time that it's going. Okay, then I came in. So here it is. I've probably interacted with it less than 20 times over the course of an hour and a half, roughly, and it created this site. Right, and now I believe it's up. There we go. Right, so anybody could go here, right? I could log in with my Replit account, right, and start editing t-shirts on my website. And I could send this to all of you, and you guys could send me fake credit cards, and we could buy t-shirts, right? Now, what do you guys think?
I think the real hassle is you have to put in real That's just changing some keys around, but
That's just my keys, right? That's just my keys. right? It's already secure, right? And Stripe is a great thing. I'm not storing credit cards, right? If I'm using Stripe, they're taking care of PCI, right? That's actually like a redirect, right? So if I add this in, it's either a redirect or an embedded form. Let's go back to the store.
Pretty impressive, truth be told.
Right? So now, a SaaS store, that's not something I really build. And there are some different things, right? So let's kind of take a step and look back, right? Was this, right? So now, yeah, this is an embedded form within mine. But if we're looking at the network panel, all this is going directly to Stripe. It's not going back to Replit. This is great, but even an hour and a half, right? I still have to go in and add my own T-shirt images, my own prices, and I'm handling Stripe's going to handle some of tax reporting for me, right? Stripe does a lot on that end, but would it have been easier and better for me if I'm selling T-shirts to stand up a Shopify store? Probably, right? But I will tell you that building this 20 years ago, people made careers off of building this stuff. Not maybe even 10 years ago, 10, 15 years ago, there were companies who did this. And then Shopify came on and knocked them out, right? But let's take this to an enterprise, right? So this is great for, am I really gonna build a SaaS? Probably not, but that's a lot of code, right? But if I'm building a little tool for myself, so now let's get fun. So Replit built this, but we're actually coders, right? What's really cool is it did all this, had this agent going, and I can actually see, Replit lets me see all the code that it used, all the code that it created. And so I think you guys are still using Vue.js here. What it created was a React app using a platform called Next.js, which kind of bundles the front end and the back end together, right? So here it all. So if I want to look at, say, my routes, right? I can go in here and here is my TypeScript code that the AI generated for my routes. Here's each page that it created for me, right? Here's my header, right? Here's the hero message on the front of the page, right? Here's my success modal. It's all here, and I can look at it. I can also download it, right? And if you were catching, when I was talking about GitHub Copilot here before, we were actually looking at the code that Replit created for me to create my custom T-shirt site. I can download that, run it locally, develop, right? Make my own changes if I know Next.js, and redeploy that in my own environment and do what I want with it, right? So lots of it's pretty amazing, right? Basically, it did something that I would know how to do, right, in Next, but did it all for me and did it for somebody who doesn't know how to code, right? And that's pretty impressive. Different no-code tools and vibe coding platforms will work a little bit differently. This is the only one I've played with really deeply, but it's just creating code that then I can take once this outscales vibe coding, right? As a developer, now I can come in, take that, make it enterprise, maintain it, change it, right? So I believe at some point, one way we can embrace AI and we can be scared of this and think, man, Replit is going to take my job, right? It's going to take everything that I'm building. Or we can say, you know what, Replit's going to let my CEO come up with, and my business leaders come up with more ideas that they want to solve with software, right? And they'll be able to figure out if software can solve the job using a tool like Replit, using vibe coding. And when they can, we're then going to take this code, and now we're going to own that, and we're going to start putting some IP into it. We're going to start maintaining that, right? We might come in a little bit later on in the process, but if there's one thing I know from 20 plus years of working with entrepreneurs and business people, they always have ideas. They're going to come up with, there's going to be more software, not less, right? And eventually, right, we can come in behind this, learn the tools that the AI is creating, and do that. Now, I could have created something else. I could have been a little more explicit and told it that I wanted it to use, Vue.js to create the website, or Nuxt, or VitePress, or whatever I want to use. It has that option when I'm creating applications. So if I want to go in here and create a new app, I can just describe it. So this is what your vibe coders are going to see. Or I can get, if I'm a little more tech, right? Because Replit started out as basically, I want to be able to develop software on the web so I can do it on my iPad when I'm on a train and traveling. That's kind of how it started, to make it really accessible. I want to be able to teach people how to code without them installing an environment, right? So Replit also lets us go really deep. Hey, I want to create a certain template, right? So if I want a back end in, C#, because that's what I use, right? Lots of different stuff that you can do, right? And then, how do you want the repo to be? So again, you can go very high level. You can also go very deep. So that's Replit. Some other things we did with Replit. So last time I gave this at the Boise Software Developers Group, I said at the beginning of after I kind of showed the t-shirt, I went in and created, let's see, how do I get back to the agent? There we go. I said, hey, let's do a new website for BSDG, right? So I told it to do that, started my presentation, how to get the admin pages, and then it went and created a website for me while I talked, right? Again, is it complete? No, right? Is it deployable now? Sure, right? So definitely something to keep our eye on and to play with. But like I said, if you are out in the business today, I think a lot of companies are slowing down hiring software developers because they're trying to figure out how many of the apps that I use developers to create can I create with this, right? One thing I spent years doing is I worked inside larger companies and built line of business apps, so small internal applications that the company uses to do their business, right? So at Micron, that's managing the test floor. At a healthcare company, it was like customer support or routing documents in the back end. So all these applications, their user base is really 10, 15, 20 people, right? Under 100 people, but they're all within a company. And there's a lot of knowledge, and it's very specific to that company. Vibe coding tools like Replit are going to start owning that, right, as soon as they can deploy into that. Because now, the business owner can come in and go, look, here's what I want to do. We can kind of deploy it. They can tweak it. And you've seen this trend going on, if you've been paying attention, for several years with tools like SharePoint, tools like project management tools like Jira or Monday or Airtable, right? Kind of these applications let me, they're a step up from SharePoint, and now I think we've gone the full way and are even bigger. All right, vibe coding. So now let's dig in. The next big thing that I think is going to blow our minds and you need to be aware of as a developer that makes your life better, right, is AI agents. What's an AI agent? And if you caught it in Replit, it actually had an agent tab that we were looking at, and that's really what it was using behind the scenes to create the code. But how can we, I'm given a project, I've got a large existing code base, you've got the project you wrote here in school, and I want to be able to do something with it. So with AI agents, really what's interesting here is I think with agents, perhaps, maybe, I can finally create an adequate developer clone of myself, right? Once you started developing, you started your career as a developer, how many personal app ideas did you have? Like, man, I want to create 15 things, but I only have time to create 2. I think agents can help us kind of jumpstart some of that. Or this is more for a BSG thing, I can at least create developers who don't care if I'm mean when I'm reviewing their code, right? So with an agent, we're going to walk through how to do that. We're going to basically walk into GitHub, and I'll walk you through some of this, what we've done. And I'm going to create an issue. Let me actually pull up let me catch you up on some of the code we're going to look at here. Where'd it go? No. There it is. So this is an application I wrote for a previous presentation that I did on creating client-side applications, right? So I'll make sure I'm in the right thing here. Okay, great. The AI broke it. All right. Like any good presenter, we're going to ditch the live coding, and we're just going to look through what we did. All right. I want to get that running. No, I'm going to take a minute here. We can edit this out.
This is a good spot to go pee.
Sure. So basically, I've got a copy of this project somewhere, and I don't, and it shouldn't be there. All right. There, here's what we're going to do. Since I don't know where I checked that out. Cursor does not like to open up on my screen. Come on. There we go. There we go. Get the right corner. Yeah. Like I said, I'm old, so like things like this. You should see me try to like print a PDF. Okay, so this is a Nuxt.js application that I wrote, right? So we're going to see kind of some view going on. No, this is the wrong window.
That's good, yeah. Cursor dot. Type that in.
Just open it again. That's better. All right. Okay, let's start again. Make sure I'm using the right TypeScript version. We'll fast forward this up. There we go. All right. All right, this should be much more fun. Nope. I apologize. That's not working. All right, so we're just going to go through. We're not going to run that. I wanted to kind of show you guys what I was doing. Okay, so you guys are familiar with GitHub, right? You guys use GitHub?
Yes.
Okay. So one thing you can do now with AI, if you buy, and we are not seeing, there we go, yeah, is now with agents, AI agents, right? Now I can do it within the browser like I was doing like Git Copilot chat. I can use agents in there. I can use them in Replit. But I can also use them inside GitHub now, right? So I created a couple issues for this. So what this started as is just purely front end. And so one of the things, I hadn't touched this project for almost a year, right? I'd given a presentation a year ago. I wanted to bring it up and give it now. Is I created an issue inside GitHub that said, hey, I haven't been updated. Can you go and update this to the latest versions of Nuxt and NPM? And then I assigned it to this little user that I don't, I just pay a license for, but I don't have to worry about his HR or his career goals. And I said, I assigned it to Copilot. So Copilot picked it up and automatically created a pull request for me. Right? So all I said was upgrade packages. Has anybody like gone through like upgrade package hell? Right? Where you start and it just goes sideways, right? If you haven't, you will. And so one thing I want to do is like, hey, I didn't know how hard it would be to upgrade packages. Doing it myself, pulling the code down and doing it, I could waste 15 or, it could work right away and in 15 minutes everything's upgraded. Or, it could take me hours, but I just didn't know, is this task going to be hours or 15 minutes? So I assigned it to Copilot, upgrade it. It went out and created all these commits, right? It went out, it created a plan for what it wanted to do, right? Let's see what it said. Right, I think I want to change these files. Here's what we're doing, and then created a whole pull request for what's going on. So it went in, it changed all my files, right? Updated all my packages to the latest versions. Ran it, did some analysis, right? Changed the title of the pull request from work in progress back to ready, and then told me about it. And then requested my review, requested my review on it. And I merged it in, it worked fine. I was like, oh, that's nice. So then I went and created another one, right? As I said, hey, so this just does a front end. Let's go ahead and add an API backend for it. So I created another story called, hey, add a backend. So create an API, right? It was just client side. I was like hard coding images. This was storing oatmeal recipes, porridge recipes. It was really awesome. I'm sorry I can't get it running, but I know we're pushing on time here. And I said, hey, look, add a backend, anonymous users, and I can't even spell again, can read recipe data, but you have to be authenticated to modify or delete recipes, right? Technical requirements, here's what I want you to use. So again, I'm a coder, right? So I can direct the API to code the way I want, as apart from vibe coding where I'm just telling it what I want it to do. I'm like, do it this way. Use Postgres, I'll provide it, so I don't want you to go and create a new like cloud-based Postgres, and add OpenAPI documentation for the endpoints, right? So went through and did it, opened up a pull request, created the initial pull request for me, told me what, updated some readmes, right? So let's look at this pull request. And this one we actually collaborated with. So it created the pull request, updated my config, updated my packages, created a whole Prisma folder, created this whole, everything in this server folder is new. Right, so it created all my APIs, created documentation for me, my gets, my deletes, all my endpoints were created, right? Even created a nice little migrate endpoint that would take my existing data and migrate it for me. There it is, right? That went through my existing recipes, right, that I had, and then created all the new ones for me. Or it added an endpoint to that. So it took the stuff I had in memory and created that, added a utility class that I could run to migrate the existing data, right? Added an auth class. And I actually pulled this one down and ran it. So we actually collaborated on this pull request. So instead of just having AI do the whole thing, come on, go back. You'll see I actually pulled the code down. So it did a bunch of changes, committed several times. I pulled it down and I made a couple of other commits, right? So there's a couple things where I pulled it down, it wasn't quite right or not the way I wanted to do it, right? So I added in, some of the Postgres configuration information for my local development environment because I told it I was going to do that. And then here's my favorite thing and what I love about this. So if you read through the initial commit, right here, it says, hey, anonymous users can do it. It says, hey, I created this pull request for you. It integrates with the existing Auth0 setup. So previously I had client-side Auth0 check-in. It said, your API is now secure. It has bare token authentication middleware, right? Which means, hey, it's going to validate that anybody accessing your API has a valid token, right? So I go and make some changes. And then I'm like, hey, the other thing you can do when I have a pull request in GitHub, and this is something we should all be doing, right, or be asking our bosses to pay for, is I can say, hey, Copilot, hey, I just made some changes to this PR that you created, and it could be a PR I created. I said, hey, can you review the changes that I've just made, right? So just the way you can ask ChatGPT to summarize a document or an email, we can ask it to review our PR. It said, hey, great, let's do that. So it reviewed it, right? It reviewed those 2 commits. It goes, hey, I'm removing this one, da-da-da-da-da, right? I've reviewed some changes. It goes, hey, I've reviewed it. Strengths, it's so nice. I'm like, it's so positive, right? Here's some strengths. Here's some great stuff that you did. Of course, it did most of it, right? API design's awesome. It did that. It's bragging on itself. And then it tells me all these areas for improvement in my pull request. Now remember, it created the initial pull request. I just went and like tweaked it a little bit for some database access. And it goes and say, hey, you know that authentication piece that I was bragging about up ahead? It doesn't actually work. It's just a placeholder, right? So when it created, it's like, I did it. We're doing bearer token authentication. And basically, if you went and looked at it, it didn't do all the authentication. It just looked, is there a token and does it have the right shape, right? Does it look like a token? It didn't actually validate that it was a valid token. So anybody who could create a token from any system, didn't have to be from my authentication provider, could have authenticated to my API. And I wouldn't, and if I just trusted the AI to do that, right? It told me it did it. It sounded like we're doing bearer token authentication. You go look at the invitation, it's not there. And then I asked it again to review it, and it goes, oh, hey, guess what? You didn't do it right. I'm like, okay, thanks. Good to know. And of course, I've been doing this for a long time. I saw that in the code. But it's there, and then it tells me some other things. So the other thing with AI is don't accept the first thing it gives you, right? Have it iterate, have it ask again, have it ask again. And when you use these agents, you'll see it'll have a conversation with itself where it'll start, and then it'll do this, and then it'll do it again, and then it'll do it again, and then it'll change it, and it'll cause bugs, and it'll fix it. But to me, this is one of the most eye-opening things I had, right? Hey, I create authentication, bearer token, it's awesome. And then as soon as I asked it to review itself, oh, hey, it doesn't actually verify it. Okay, that's a big deal, right? Not for this thing, right? We're doing oatmeal recipes, but for anything in the real world, when I asked for authentication, it wasn't there. So you still have to test it. The other stuff is stuff I knew that wasn't there. But I thought, you know what, that's good enough. It created the API for me, and let's move on. So this one I had to touch, and there's also like some pretty significant bugs in it. But again, this is my workflow. So again, I would go do this, and this is intensive stuff if you've done it yourself. So initially when it wrote its database access, it wrote it talking directly to Postgres. I know there's a library called Prisma that I want to use that's better. So I created another story and said, hey, Prisma's better. It supports automatic data schema migrations. It's used, right? It's industry-wide. It's used all over the place. Can you do that? Follow our monolith structure. Pull it out into a library instead of being in the app, right? So hey, re-architect the code. And this one, I was super impressed because it just did it, right? And cleaned it up, and I approved it, right? So it went and took all my code from one location, inline, pulled it out to like a reusable library within my project, right? Worked it, made sure it ran, and I pulled it down, reviewed it, checked it back in, and that probably would have taken me, an hour of time to do myself, because I always forget all the syntax. But then I had some more. So again, these are ones where, and then I went back and said, hey, update the server API token. So again, let's walk through this. Let's see it live, right? So it told me that the authentication couldn't work, right? So let's go ahead and assign this to Copilot. Boom, assign to Copilot, and then we'll start seeing here in a second, it'll create a PR for me to try and fix the issue that it found. Thanks for assigning the issue for me. It's so polite, right? None of my other developers ever said thank you that I've ever worked with or hired. You can make it smarter. That's new, right? So again, there's a lot you can do to tell Copilot how to work. Again, I'm trying to do it like just lame. And it started to work. So at this point, it hasn't really done anything, but I could go in, and if I want, I can care about what it's doing, right? It's spinning up a dev environment in the background to start running its agents against, right? And I could also do that here, right? Where I could go agent mode, right? So that's what you can do in GitHub, and that's amazing, right? I don't know if you realize that, but like asking a bot, the AI to do that for me, and then giving me a suggestion, even if I'm just reviewing it. So one of those power skills as a developer, and it's kind of something you need to learn, is how to review code, right? Not how to write it, but how to review it, how to validate it, how to know what I'm doing. But man, I was super happy when it updated the packages for me. All right, so here's our application. We're gonna look at that middleware, that token auth that wasn't working, right? And so here's the implementation for JWT auth. That's not it. Let's see, where was it? Oh, I'm sorry. I need to look on the server side. So that's apps, server, here we go. Here it is, right? So here is this token authentication that wasn't any good. Basically, it gets the auth header, substring 7, and says if the length's less than 10, then it's not a good token, right? You know, so, okay, great. So, I mean, but that's what it created for me. So somewhere, right, it figured that was the right thing to do, right? Obviously, it's not. So what I can go is I can go in here and say, hey, can you update the auth.ts file to validate the JWT auth 0. Sure, I can do that for you. Well, let's see. Right, so it's going through, checking my code, needs me to install something. I don't even know what that is, right? Jose? I need to install Josie. Is that Josie or Jose? It's Jose. All right. We're gonna install Jose, and it can't because something's not working. Oh, because it was using npm, and I'm not using npm. I'm using pnpm. Right. So again, but let's see. But this is interesting, right? Because again, I'm in a branch, right? Why not? Right? What's it gonna do? I don't know what it is, but I didn't have to do a Google search. It's going to create some code, and now it's going to go show me the changes that it make, right? And I can look at that, right? So it's telling me about it. It's adding things, and now I can look at this, right? So I could do that in GitHub if I'm using GitHub, right? It's going to create a PR that might look similar to this. I can also do it in my IDE if I don't have that, right? And again, I'm using GitHub Copilot here. This could be Claude. It could probably be Codex, which is terminal-based. And it's still going, right? Now, I know way more than I ever wanted to know about JWTs, and just the fact that it's writing that much code scares me, right? You know, I mean, not only the package, but like that's not actually, like that scares me because I saw something in here that said something about creating a database table with scopes. Okay, that's not too bad. Anyway, so I'm gonna have to review this, right? But it went through and created a whole bunch of stuff for me. So let's take a look. So again, I'm not creating this code, but now I'm reviewing it, right? And sometimes this code is going to have bugs, and sometimes it's not going to do what I want, right? And so there's a balance between, because I know JWTs and I know what I would really have to do in this situation, to go implementing it myself or asking AI to do it, which is quicker, me to debug the AI or me to actually do it myself. And so, and again, the AI is just going to keep getting smarter, but this is going to be a lot of your workflow, right? As you move into like the professional realms is, hey, I'm going to ask the agent, right, the AI, hey, here's my requirement, here's my story, right? You're going to see, you know, project managers create a bug, right? That bug's going to get put in Jira and described. That bug's going to get assigned to the AI, to Copilot. Copilot's going to create a PR, right, that the team's then going to review to see if it solves the bug, right? And if you're really excited, it's going to create that PR. That PR is going to get automatically deployed. Another agent's going to come along and write a test for it, right, and test it for you. Like people are going to start doing that, right? And we're going to kind of manage and come in where we want. But, you know, this is pretty big, so I'm going to go and accept everything. But in this case, I would definitely, you know, look at the PR, and I'm going to review this because it's security related, and look at it. But that's a bunch of code, and if I didn't know how to do this, right? Well, now I can see the code. I can look at it. I can now learn. I'm going to learn what that Jose package is, right? I'm going to learn about what this is looking like, right? So let's see, what did it change here? I'm not going to read through everything, right? So it went through, it modified documentation, added packages, right? So it modified a bunch of stuff, right? But now we can also go back and say, hey, let's go look at our PR, It looks like it's still going, right? It hasn't asked for my review on it yet, right? So this one's still running. But again, I can let those two run, then I can compare the two and see what's going on. But this is how to make, kind of coding fun. And I use this in the real job, right? I use it where, I'm using it more and more to create multiple level file changes that are kind of similar. I'm doing a lot of the inline stuff, happens all the time. So the agents, if you're not using them, use them as you're like interviewing for jobs. If they're not putting agents out there, right? They're hamstringing you, because what's going to happen with the agents is because they move so fast, right? Business leaders are going to expect us to move at the speed of AI as software developers, right? So we have to use AI to make ourselves more efficient, right? We have to be using the tools. People who aren't using the tools, right? It's going to be a challenge. There's exceptions. There's always artisans, right? Even though you can mass produce cabinets from IKEA, the custom cabinet maker still makes a lot of money, right? And is sought after. Again, deep engineering, right? You're a craftsman in the art. You're really good at the computer science, or are you just delivering something that creates some value? So kind of review on our AI agents. You can review your pull request, right? You can also, within Cursor, I could ask it, I could change it from agent to ask, and I can say, hey, can you review this file? And again, I used to be able to type, right? Oh, damn it, PowerPoint. Someday I'll figure out how to make that work, where I can keep PowerPoint on a thing, right? So again, what I wrote here was, hey, can you, that was the update. Hey, can you review this, right? The accuracy. Sure, it'll review it. Let me check how the Austereo plugin's working, what's correct, areas for improvement, recommended improvements on how it should do, and then a summary. And again, this is in the IDE, right? So I can run that, right? I can ask, review my code before I've even checked it in, right? Before somebody even looks at it. And then I can take those or not, right? As a developer, right? As one who owns the code, I can do that. It can access improvements, it can write code, it can do boring stuff you don't want to do, like write tests and review code, right? And do the boring stuff. So to kind of wrap it up, right? As a developer, it can be kind of scary, right? The storm can be scary with AI, right? It can kind of be like a rough time. And you're going to hear things like, these jobs won't be here, right? That's fine. But if you're solving business problems and you're using software to do it, there's a job there, right? It might look different, right? You're going to have to use the tools of AI to solve the business problem, right? Or you're using AI tools into making the AI tools better, making the code better, making the frameworks better, right? Again, even if I'm writing low-level, technical code, I can still ask the AI to review it for me, right? I can still go, oh, there's a bug where I'm transposing this. I can ask it to give me some solutions to problems, right? I can have it automatically run tests on what I'm doing, right? Embrace it. So don't look at it as something that's going to scare you, but also look at it as an opportunity, right? The one thing that I've had, like I said, I've been doing this for 20 plus years. And so for this group, you guys are just starting your developer career, most of you, is the thing that I hate about software and this career, and the thing that I love about it, is it transforms itself. In the past, it's been every 3 to 5 years, right? There's a new technology, whether it went from client server when I started, to the web, to an outsourcing model, to a web 2.0 and social media, to mobile apps, to SaaS, to cloud, right? And now we're on to this AI piece, right? And AI is going to start going faster than 3 to 5 years. But the one thing that always allowed is, as somebody who's been in it a long time, you're always relearning. The stuff I learned, the principles and the skills I learned in, 2002 are still valid, but the technology really isn't, right? So I'm always relearning technology, and there's always an opportunity for somebody new to come in and learn the AI tools better than the old person who's busy maintaining systems that haven't taken it on yet, right? So because the industry reinvents itself, there's always an opportunity for new developers to come in, really get deep and learn the new tools, the new technologies, and actually jump over right? Jump over some of these people who have been programming for a long time. In 2007, it's a long time ago, but Micron did like its first layoffs for a long time, right? And they laid off like 15, 20% of their staff. And there were people there who were like senior engineers. They'd worked there for like 15 years, right? And they knew Perl really well, this programming language, but they also knew like Perl and how it worked within this manufacturing environment. But that's all they did, right? And they went out looking for a job, and they're like, what do you know? Well, I know Perl. Okay, well, what Perl libraries? Well, these. Well, those are all at Micron. Those don't have any relevance out here. And you were seeing people with 15 years experience having a hard time getting jobs, and people who had learned at the time some of the new Web 2.0 stuff, who knew jQuery, who knew how to build on the web, and who knew how to build mobile apps, getting more job offers than they could handle, right? And they were brand new to the field, right? And so you're going to get some of that with AI. AI is going to let you build things that are, as a junior developer, are above your level, right? But also, as like you're coming in, the other thing is you still own the code. You're still responsible. Don't just take what the AI says at face value, right? When I presented this a couple weeks ago, somebody's like, I had to turn GitHub Copilot off because I was just tabbing all the time. I'm like, dude, you turned your mind off, right? I didn't say that. He's not here. But I kept thinking about that, right? This guy who wasn't using it because he turned his mind. I'm like, just because it suggests code for you doesn't mean I have to accept it. Doesn't mean it's what I'm doing, right? It doesn't mean it's my workflow. Don't turn your mind off and just accept the AI, right? We saw AIs like, hey, I put in bearer token authentication. And you're like, you ask, are you sure? No, not really, right? And then it went and added all these packages and did all this work, right? Don't just turn it off, right? There's still a lot to create, and embrace either the deep science of it, like, hey, I'm gonna really learn this framework because I'm gonna know it better than the AI is for my problem. I'm gonna know it so good that when the AI doesn't do it right, I can go in and tweak it. When the AI does it right, that's great. It's gonna save me time. I'm not gonna be a typist, right? But I'm gonna know these frameworks so good that I can do it. Or, hey, you know what? I'm gonna learn some business problem so well that I can solve it, right? As a software developer, I always say to like groups like this, your superpower isn't that you can code, right? It's true. Like when they outsource stuff to India, some of those guys could pass a lead coding quiz much better than I could, right? But they didn't understand the business near as well as I did, right? Your ability to deliver software solutions and solve a business problem, right? And understand some other field, that's the real superpower, right? As software developers, our job isn't to code really cool, frameworks and have our, in Node or Perl or JavaScript or whatever the coolest language is now, is to solve business problems, right? And I think if you embrace AI, you can solve more business problems quicker, right, and easier, and deliver more solutions than we could before. And that includes your own ideas, your own side projects, and maybe some of those 20 domains you have sitting there that aren't being used could actually be deployed and have something out there. So embrace it and have fun with it. That's it. You guys have any questions, comments? Because we always have time for, I know it's Friday, everybody's looking to bounce.
Are you still at Micron? Is that what you said?
No, I left in, I tried to get laid off during the layoffs, and I got a promotion. Because they were laying people off to outsource to India, and I'd spent the 2 previous years working with teams in India, right? Because I saw it coming, right? And so I left and I did healthcare, and now I do, I've been an independent consultant since 2009, running my own small software company. It's very exclusive. It's me and some chatbots. Yeah. But yeah, I have a couple clients in town.
So with this, and I guess this is all senior developers as well, but kind of just since they made us sign up for LinkedIn and everything at the start of this, I'm seeing a lot of here's a new job, but it's the same old, 10 years of experience for a junior dev job. That alone already is kind of hard getting into that field. I feel like for you guys, you could build that experience before AI and everything, and just the code part of it.
Right.
How do you I guess what's your opinion on how to navigate that CEO looking for this one senior dev to handle AI or all that?
Great question. And it's hard looking for software jobs in general right now, even if you are a senior dev, right? So like after I gave this talk 2 weeks ago, and my friend Jim was there, and he took him, he's like myself, 20 plus years. It took him 6 months to find a new job. And at the end of the day, it wasn't through LinkedIn, it was through somebody that he knows, right? And so I think building your network, you can use LinkedIn to apply for jobs, but the real value of LinkedIn is networking and getting to know people and getting contacts who know you personally. And then something I've said forever, I don't think it changed. I think maybe AI makes it even more important, is that coming into the career field, you got to find that first project's the hardest one to get, right? And so if you're having a hard time, and again, companies aren't hiring a lot of junior devs, and that's been true for like years. AI's just accelerated it. Because nobody wants to sit there and they're just hesitant to train. And so what you have to do is you have to build something on your own, whether that's taking your portfolio project that you're building here, building a passion project on the side, use AI to do it, right? Host it in Replit, host it somewhere, or a more VO, so that's Vercel. So go to Vercel, that's a little more developer focused and less vibe coding focused, but it's where you can easily host the applications you've been building here. And you guys haven't quite gone through that, or AWS. Build a passion project, get it out there, and then when you're applying for those jobs, you're like, hey, I'm a junior person with this. You're like, hey, I built this. I think this solution is similar to what you're trying to solve. Here's a problem that I solved, right? And so don't be afraid to you got to focus on, I'm going to come solve problems for you, not I know how to, I'm a great programmer. I know how to talk all this programmer speak, right? I think that the path and hopefully I'm not speaking out of time here with Jake, but what this puts you on, you guys are definitely on the two ends of the podium, right? You guys have to be in that I solve business problem side, right? You're going to get out mathed and out geeked by the people with a computer science degree who are building the deep science, right? At least if you're looking to enter the career field, right? So your job is I solve problems, right? So it could be like, hey, I just went through a coding boot camp. I know how to build apps. I also know how to leverage this thing called Replit, which can help us build line of business applications in minutes. Can I show you how? Right? And so it's coming in and not trying to compete against, somebody with a master's degree in computer science on the computer science stuff, but compete in, look, I'm scrappy and I can solve problems, right? And not get caught up in all this other stuff, right? So, but again, it's been true for 10, 15 years that doing a side project, right? Even if it's not real, but it's a site out there that people can look at, it's code that people can look at, you have to have that. Like that's a huge advantage to getting in. And then the rest of it's all about relationships and who you know. But you got to build something.
Just out of curiosity, is it more not necessarily put it on our resumes or portfolios of we know how to use AI, but more something along the lines of we know how to debug AI code?
I don't think anyone's going to care if you debug AI code, but as a platform, you could say, hey, if you're going through projects. So really, when you're early in your career, again, just to be clear, I haven't applied for a job in over a decade, right? Most of my clients are all project based, but I guess if I was looking for somebody to hire, right, is I would want to look at what have they done, right? So I'm more in you're about showing skills and projects versus I've had 10 years, but hey, I built these things. So hey, I built this with Replit, I built this with this, I built this with this tool. And if you can show proficiency with those AI platforms, right? So not just I can debug AI code, they're gonna be like, yeah, whatever, of course, because you're using AI to debug it, right? But if you can say, hey, I built this with Replit, I built this application with V0, right? I built this application using whatever, right? Using Azure OpenAI, or this one with the open API keys, and this one with this. What's gonna happen is you're gonna catch that keyword that business person's looking for. Like, oh, I built this in Replit, but now I'm looking to scale it. And oh, Replit? I've heard about that, right? Oh, maybe you can actually help me make that work, right? So if you've built something, you can tell the platform and the tools you use to build it. I think that there's probably value in that, but so generic, that's not gonna, again, it goes back to hey, I've done something, I can show you what I've done, and I can help you with this tool. That's the other thing. A lot of consulting jobs I got, my very first one, startup I was at was running out of money, came to a user group, standing in a parking lot, talking with some other developers like, hey, do you still know, this? Are you still using this open source project and this other open source project, right? A and B. I'm like, yeah, we just wrote this big thing. Startup's kind of dying, but yeah, we used A and B, right? And they're kind of obscure, like they were, within our circle, but they were very specific. He's like, oh yeah, because I just trained somebody in Philadelphia who's looking for contract help for A and B, right? So it wasn't that I knew .NET. It wasn't that I had 10 years. It's that I had spent the last year and a half using platforms A and B, and they had already chosen to go down that road, and we're looking for that. And so you try to find, like, okay, I think, the kind of businesses I want to work at, they're likely going to build applications in this, and so I need to learn how to use those tools. And so, 5 years ago, that was, I needed to learn how to build something with, a SPA front end, whether that's React, Vue, or Angular, and I need a Node.js backend, right? 5 years, that was it. That's what they were looking for. And I think now you're going to see, I know Lovable, I know Replit, I know V0, I know these AI tools, or I know how to integrate. Again, maybe I'm building AI applications, so I can build a chatbot in OpenAI. I can build RAG implementations in whatever. I think my gut tells me those are the keywords and the skills to have.
Is there like a reason that you'd be looking at AI like development as opposed to something like Shopify, where it is more like drag and drop and functionally does the same thing as far as other people who
I guarantee you Shopify is calling their drag and drop interface AI now. I know exactly what you're saying, 100% drag and drop, but I bet if we go to Shopify, they're calling it Shopify's AI. And so if you've been in the field, like that drag and drop, we had one question where I went through and I created that, the t-shirt shop, and we looked at the Next.js code, and he's like, isn't that just like starting with a template? I'm like, yes, you can find application templates that do that. You can find drag and drop that does the same thing, WordPress that does the same thing.
sorry, that is my question, is why you want to have like a story-based thing where it is still just spitting out a template as opposed to also just templates where you can see and be able to like drag and drop and maneuver it that way, as opposed to trying to say you want to rearrange how those elements were, trying to explain that.
Right.
As opposed to just being able to shuffle those lines.
So I think, as the programmers, we end up doing both, right? But from a business perspective, from the guy sitting on the far end who's like, hey, I built a SaaS in minutes, right? There's a big difference of effort level in what he has to learn to do drag and drop, even in like Shopify, versus just writing something out in prose. And a lot of times they're not writing it out, they're using voice to text and just talking it in, right? And so, but again, in reality, what does it do? Chances are, like, I'm talking, and then what the AI is doing is the AI is just doing that moving around for me, right? But the platform's the same. And so I think it's about solving problems, right? If you can solve the business problem by doing the Shopify or the WordPress customization, right? Without the AI, then you're still solving a problem, right? But you're going to be expected to solve it as fast as that agent did in Copilot, right? So they're going to want to be able to send you a story and be like, hey, well, Replit, I just typed it in. I didn't have to get a story approved and go to sprint planning and talk about that. But under the hood, it's doing the same thing. Right? So a lot of these AI stuff, like we saw it, it's adding a package, right? It's adding Jose, and it's doing this, and it's doing this. Well, that's all stuff we would have done, right? That's adding the packages and writing the code. It's just adding this layer on top of it to abstract it a little bit. But like I said, the t-shirt and even the water thing, yeah, that should be a Shopify store because they've got so many things that do it that makes it better, right? What we did in minutes, okay, I can take a credit card in minutes, but the reality is I'm taking the credit card because Stripe has spent years making it easy to build applications that can take credit cards, right? That's really what made that possible. It's not the AI, it's the fact that that framework sat there, and then Replit was able to take business speak and integrate with that AI and produce a work product. So I think that's kind of where, you got to be open to both and understand when one is the other, but then also when talking to the business, when should I say it's like this? Right? Versus when should I say it's AI? There's a little buzzword bingo there too, because I'm sure Shopify is saying they're using AI. And they probably are in various levels, and they're probably also taking some of, that templating and now calling it AI, or putting a very small AI layer on top of it for marketing speak. I've got a client that does that. It's we have AI marketing for food brands. and it's something we could have written, like we could have written it 10 years ago, right? You know, so it's not, potentially, right? There's pieces in there that we can't now. But anyway, but there's, you know, a lot of people are saying that.
There's definitely a lot to that. Just not even related to it, but the idea back in the day was if you had .coms at the end of your business name, it would become very valuable, even if you don't own a website. The exact same thing has been seen.
Yeah.
Add AI into your name,
Right.
you start to get more business.
Well, and the expectation now from businesses, from VCs, that if you're not using AI, you're falling behind, right? So as a developer, if you're not using AI to develop software, then you're falling behind and you're now like, you're a dinosaur, right? So back to the kind of the hiring questions, or if I'm a company and I'm delivering software solutions and I'm not using AI, people are gonna look at me like, they're gonna do one of two things, right? There's gonna be some people that have these old legacy systems that AI can't key into, or their enterprise isn't ready for AI at this level, and they're gonna need people who know how to come in there, write the code without AI, right? Make it work and pay attention in some of these high environments, right? So that's, you know, there's enterprises like, I have friends who are at Micron. Micron can't use GitHub Copilot because they're afraid of leaking secrets, right? So yeah, their architects are sitting there and they're bringing in on-premise agents and self-hosting things, and you know, they're gonna use it, but there's still a need for people now who can do the job without it, right? One of the stories I didn't share was, you know, I was a junior coder back in the late 90s, and part of my job was preparing systems for the big Y2K event where all the computer systems were gonna die because they didn't know how to handle 4-digit years, right? And I was on a plane flying home for Christmas, and we just tested our systems, and we were there, and I was talking to this lady, and you know, grandma, like my grandma's age, right? And she's all, oh, you're a programmer? What are you doing? Oh, I did this Y2K stuff or whatever. I'm feeling cool. She's like, oh yeah, I programmed a bunch of those systems back in the 70s, and we knew they were gonna break. We just didn't think they'd last that long, right? But what's great now is I've made a lot of money in the last couple of years going and fixing all that stuff that I wrote 20 years ago. I came out of retirement and fixed all this stuff. So, you know, there's a lot there. There's gonna be, like, you know, and so there's still gonna be that need of people to come and fix the stuff that's been around and work in those environments. Eventually those are gonna go away. I don't know what the time frame is. You know, but there's definitely gonna be that piece of it's gonna happen for a while. It's gonna be hard to find. A lot of people trying to get those jobs, but. Does anybody have anything they're gonna build over the weekend now?
You guys should try and build one of your checkpoints. It'd be a good idea. You could probably pass it the sandbox API and say, hey, I need to build a new application. I need to get the weather. You know, do that. You could definitely give it a shot and see what it gives out.
And that could be, I mean, that's kind of what that could be, I built an application, now let me ask AI to build it and see how it does it differently, right? You know, to kind of learn how to work with it, right? Because everybody's workflow is gonna be a little different on what you want it to do, how you want it to do it, but you're gonna be expected to use it, you know, especially coming in. And I think it can make you faster, better, and can help you progress in your skills quicker, right? You talked about how do I get 10 years of experience? Well, the AI has hundreds of years of combined experience, right? So yeah, you can't get 10 years of experience in a year, but can you, in the next 6 months, can you learn how to leverage the hundreds of years of experience in these AI tools to solve problems, right? As your skills come up, I think that's a valid, you know, opportunity.
I did have a question, and I think this kind of plays on what you just said. Building those applications with like D0 or like Replit, you said like a couple times, right? We're like, this is great for POC, MVP, right? And then when you're ready to scale it out, get in there, right?
Right.
So there's obviously a gap somewhere from vibe coding to get in there and build it out.
Sure.
There's probably a lot of us in the room. I kind of know how I would do it, right? But how would you suggest them closing that gap, right? Because we're definitely going coding it all ourselves, right?
Right.
We want to leverage those tools, but we also don't want to just fall back into just vibe coding, right? Because then we can't get in there and we can't scale it.
Yeah, so I think part of the reason I say this is because like I know the code, right? So I could open the code and go, oh, that's next. I kind of know next, right? Or I could have asked it to do it in the language of my choice. And then at some point, it becomes quicker for me to go in and make those minor edits, like, oh, hey, I need to update the style sheet, and I know exactly what to do, or I need to update this. But your business is going to keep, so some of those business people who don't have programmer resources are going to keep vibe coding for a long time. And it's going to iterate and iterate and iterate. But you do have that happening with vibe coding where at some point, and you notice it's doing these checkpoints all the time, because you can get down a path and you're just like, dude, I don't know where we are, it's messed up, it's not working, and you got to go back and start again. So I think we're starting to figure out what that path is and how far some of these vibe coding tools can take it. And a lot of that depends on, a lot of that's gonna come down to like enterprise stuff. Again, I think you're gonna find a lot of pockets of businesses and enterprises who are gonna start having business critical operations are gonna move from these Excel spreadsheets and SharePoint, right? And they're gonna move into these vibe coded apps that, Rob did over the weekend on his desk, right? And you're going to start having that. And then at some point, it's going to be like, well, that data is not secure, or it falls out of some compliance, and that's when it's going to get pulled in. But it's also a way to learn, right? Like you're learning how to build applications. You can ask the AI to build it, and you can learn like, oh, here's what they did. Here's a package I didn't know about, right? An example I can take is, years ago, ORMs were a new thing, right? So how to access a database. We used to write all our own SQL and all our own mapping, and we're dealing with raw data tables. And then ORMs came, and people were like, well, I'm not going to use that because I can write better SQL, right? And then the ORMs started writing better SQL, and you'd look at some of these queries, and you'd be like, oh, that's interesting. I didn't know we could do that. I didn't know that was possible, right? That's an interesting way. That's an interesting way of thinking about writing the query. So you're going to find that in AI as a learning tool, right? Have AI build a project that you wrote and see what choices it makes that might be different than yours, right? And see if there's something you can learn from that. Because then you can tell it, hey, all right, I want to build it, but hey, here's how I built it. You saw a comment in there, like we can dive deeper into how to make these agents code the way you want, right? With these MCP tools and coding instructions and all that. But I think use it to learn would be a great one. And I don't know, that's part of the art, right? I think software is an art, right? Especially at that far level of solving business problems. It's less science and more art, right? And more just figuring things out. So I don't know what that line is. It'll be different for everybody. Like I guarantee you that guy, C-Bar, if he decides he wants to start that water company, he's not going to use what he vibe coded, right? He's going to go and he's going to pay for a big Shopify store probably because that's going to have the fulfillment and the hooks into the resellers and the last minute delivery and right, all that stuff. He's going to tie into that. But again, those tools that he uses are going to be built using AI, and they're going to have AI components to them. I don't know, it's exciting because we don't know the answers. Right? I think that's the most exciting thing about it is we don't know what it's going to look like. And it changes. So I think when I prepared the presentation, OpenAI Codex wasn't generally available, and it is now. And so it's kind of like JavaScript frameworks in the 2010s. During a presentation on all the JavaScript frameworks that were cool, 3 more would be released. So during this presentation, there's been 2 steps forward in AI somewhere that we have to find out about. But I think that's an opportunity, but it's an interesting time.
I saw today on LinkedIn, Meta posted about prompt engineers in a world ruled by AI or by agents.
Okay.
Is like they have their certification program for prompt engineering. It's
Okay.
kind of becoming I think, pretty common thing. Is that something that is actually worth anything, or is it just figuring out yourself how to use?
I don't know. I don't like the whole prompt engineer thing, but then again, I've been doing software for 20 some years, and it seems, but you're going to have people who do that. So even in my experience, I always equate prompt engineers to the people who liked to build every application every requirement they built on a WordPress site by bringing in different WordPress modules and making it all work together. They're going to love prompt engineering and AI. I kind of equate those two in my head. So you have to learn how to prompt. You have to learn how to write good prompts. I mean, I wrote crappy prompts and got pretty decent results. If I write better prompts, I could get better results. I spent more time on them. So you have to learn how to do that. Whether prompt engineer is a valid career field, I don't know. Right? If that's really going to be a job. They're saying it is, but
Solving business problems. It's vibe coding, right? It's the same thing.
I'm a little skeptical. Well, I think you changed from like vibe coding. I also think in my mind, there's a difference between using an agent to try to accomplish something and vibe coding, and it's really the attitude you're taking into it, right? So vibe coding, I would have kept going, oh, change this, try to change this. I'm experimenting, I'm telling it what to do. I'm not really caring what the code looks like. I'm just like, oh, hey, let's do this. I'm vibing, right? Vibing, just having fun. And I think there's at some point of that continuum, and it goes from like vibe coding to, again, I'm really trying to like develop some software that's solid as the output, right? And the agents are in there. That being said, you'd have, in the last couple of weeks, I think, was it this week or last week, Amazon, right? The CTO or somebody high up there sent out, a paper or a leaked email that, they expect to decrease headcount because they expect every department to use AI. So every time they have a request for headcount, the first question they have to answer is, do we have to hire this person, or can we use an AI to do the job instead? And that's coming down from the top. And so if you're seeing it there, again, a lot of people are followers, right? You see it there, every other company is going to start having those same questions, right? Can I use AI to do that? And in some, it's like, yes, if you have somebody, somebody has to watch it, right? For now, maybe not. It'll get smarter and it'll be good enough, right? That's also as like programmers, we can care about the code and what it looks like and what library it's looking like. The business could care less if it solves their problem. They don't care how it showed up. A lot of people, so. Good questions.
Until they get hacked. Then they care.
And then they blame whoever they can make responsible for it, right? That's the other thing, like the one kind of software IT related field that is not slowing down is anything related to computer security, right? Because the bots have made AI has made securing stuff even harder. And that's one where I don't feel like there's been any slowdowns if that's a path to take. And maybe you guys can add more into that, but like security has gotten, it's actually more in demand and more important because you're going to have more software. And so securing is going to become harder and harder.
And you have stuff going into production like your JWT.
Right?
Just because people don't know. They don't
Right.
have the slightest idea that that's a vulnerability.
Right. Well, and I even asked it to use Auth0 because I was using Auth0 in the client. The code already had a Auth0 redirect and the application ID and everything. And so the way that works is on the client side, you just go, oh, I can call into Auth0 and it'll validate the token for me, right? It'll just make sure that it's signed, or I can pull I pull the public key down from Auth0 and then I can validate the signature locally, right? So it's a problem that it should have known how to solve given that prompt, but it totally failed, and it failed really bad. So I'm super glad I got that example to show.
That's a good one. Any other questions?
I don't know like how much of a problem it would be like long term for coding, but I know for like AI generated art, a lot of when it comes like looking at the long term of it, the issue is at a certain point because what it's pulling from is just going to be a bunch of AI generated stuff, which especially because a lot of it doesn't get touched up, it is visually clear what it is. Like
Right.
it is easy to see like the mistakes it has, stuff like that.
You can tell, like every picture in this presentation is AI generated.
I
And you can tell.
Yeah.
Right.
So I guess like.
And it's so much better, except for that one diagram that looked really crappy with the right and the left. Yeah, that was me in draw.io. That was me. Yeah.
But like, I guess like the same idea would apply because a lot of that, like, because of how much it will eventually cannibalize itself, it is just going to get progressively worse again, right? Right now, a lot of it's pulling up like human-made stuff, but eventually that pool is going to be so much AI-generated content that it's pulling from itself.
Right.
When it comes to it writing bad code, especially if people are like looking at it, and like eventually that will be the data set that it has. It's a bunch of bad code, and people are not checking it.
I think apart from art, I do think code can be analyzed for quality a lot better, right? But I do think you're going to get an explosion of bad or not well-architected solutions, right? Now, are we getting that today? Yeah, right? I've also built part of my career on fixing stuff that people wrote badly. But it's going to explode, right? So like in AI generated art, right? It's like anybody can do art like this now that I couldn't have even come close before, right? And now I do that. Again, I said, hey, give me some bison in a snowstorm, and then I went out and did something else, and Sora generated it, and I dumped it in, right? You're going to get the same with code. It's going to explode. The amount of code out there, and you are going to have that decay. But the point I want to make, I don't know if it's valid for art, but you talk about, hey, the code gets worse. That's where we talk about all the code's built upon these frameworks, right? So some of that deep, let's say science, and maybe it's not so deep, right? We can get like the quantum, how AI works, but from an application development perspective, I think, right now we use, all the frameworks we use to build software applications, and let's say, and for that I'm talking about like mobile web apps, right, backends, right? That's what most of us build and what we think of. So let's kind of scope it to that. All those frameworks are built for a person to sit there and write it. I think there's an opportunity for some of those frameworks to evolve to be better written in AI, right? And some of those frameworks are now going to be, there's new frameworks that have yet to be created to maybe replace Nuxt, replace Ruby on Rails, replace, the ASP.NET Core. You're gonna, within the next, couple years, you're gonna get some new frameworks there for building and delivering applications that aren't built on what we've been using over the last 10 years, that were built for just a person or a team of people to go in there and write code, right? So like this oatmeal recipe, this porridge recipe app that I wrote that I couldn't get running, the whole point of that presentation was to build a modular monolith application so that you could have a mono repo. You didn't have to do microservices, but you could have multiple people working on the project and not step on each other's toes. So the whole point of that architecture, how the code was organized, was because I had humans working on it and we needed to collaborate, right? Does that structure need to still be there once I'm having agents do most of it, right? Or once we're having AI generated, or once we're having, the requirements come in from the business and we're trying to implement those first? Is there a new way that you're seeing websites and documents deliver data in formats that AI can ingest, right? There's probably something where, these frameworks using to build apps can be built and organized in a better way so that AI can generate it more efficiently and not get bloated. Like we even saw that Nuxt app, like, it's not great. It made bad code. Like that's an hour and 22 minutes, and you're like, it probably wouldn't pass your school code review here, right? They'd like, no, clean this up, do this, right? Why are you writing your data access that way? And by the way, you're failing because your token authentication is crap, right? So like in art, I think at some point, people are always going to generate things. There's going to be new art that's generated using AI that you couldn't generate, and your creators are going to use AI to generate art that's interesting. But then there's going to be a human side to the art that AI is never going to be able to touch. I think coding is going to be maybe not as much opportunity, but kind of similar. There's going to be some opportunity in there to use AI to create really interesting applications that we couldn't create before. But that framework level, I think, is going to change.
What I wonder is, at what scope and scale can it truly continue to function, right?
Don't limit it, right? So this is where I'm going to like not be the old guy and like get off my grass. I think there's a lot of smart people being really ambitious, selling a big dream on what it can do. And so I wouldn't, as somebody who's been doing this for 20 plus years, I'm expecting AI to be able to generate bigger and more and more and more of the stuff that I've been writing. I don't think it's going to hit a wall. I think it's just going to get bigger, right? So like when I talked, this is a year, 2 years ago, right? They're thinking of taking like 100-page specification documents for software they want and giving that to the AI, right? Build all of this, right? Given our libraries and once they've trained their own model, right? And again, that's a huge context window. Right, so they're going to get there, maybe not on the vibe coding side, but I think they're going to push. I don't think there's a limit to what it's going to start taking on. I think it's just going to get bigger. So, bigger pie.
Talking about being like the old man yelling about get off my grass a lot. Was there something specific in AI that you saw where you were like, maybe there is something to this, or were you pretty?
Oh, like I've never like hated it. It's more of a like you can look at it and go, oh well, the AI code wasn't written as good as like what I used to do, right? You can kind of go into that, or hey, it couldn't do this,
Yeah.
or I can get really grumpy about it, doing a bad auth implementation, right? Is really more what I'm talking about. But for me, I always pay attention to it. But like I said, I've used Copilot for that autocomplete, the tab stuff. I've been like, hey, there's packages I've used in my code, libraries that I won't let people on my team use anymore because of AI, right? They're like, oh, I need this like templating package. I'm like, no, we're not templating it, just because now it doesn't take you 2 days to write the mapping code. It takes you 20 minutes because you tell the AI to do it, and then you debug it, and then you write a test on it. So we don't need all these libraries that would do that for us, so we wouldn't have to type it out, right? And so there's actually like, 3 weeks ago, I had a very senior developer say, hey, you mind if I add this package to the project? I'm like, no. Like, I'm worried that you're asking me you want to add that because you should be doing it this way. But we can get that way, right? Well, I can do it, And I think it's the other way is, I put that up there, I'm trying to stay away. I used to be maybe 2 years ago, and now I'm more like, okay, I'm on the other side. I'm not, AI is going to replace my job, but like, it's going to make my job easier, right? It's going to help me, it's going to help my grass be greener. So yeah, I think it's going to be babysat. Again, I do get a little hesitant when you have the business guy, I created this and whatever, and then you see that and I realize that, oh my God, every client I'm going to talk to now who has seen somebody like him on YouTube is going to expect it to take minutes, But then if you dig in, it's like, oh, I was up till 3 a.m. playing with it, and you're like, okay, well, minutes, it means less than a day, right? And so, like, that's where I'm kind of like, gosh, now I'm gonna have to deal with all these people thinking, not really understanding what's still there. But as somebody who's done it for 20 years, I'm also trying to be like, okay, well, just because it took me 2 days to deploy that Kubernetes cluster or get that app out, right? Now with AI or these hosting platforms, like, should it really be taking me 2 hours? I'm questioning all that. Like, okay, so they say it, and that's what started this talk, was he said, hey, I built it in minutes. Okay, really? Because I'm finally hearing enough, because for the last 2 years, I'd be like, yeah, bullshit, right? No, you didn't. No, you didn't, right? So I'm like, okay, I need to see what it said. And it's like, okay, maybe he did, right? He did what he said. As a developer, here's what it means, right? Should he have done it this way? Probably, but that was pretty impressive, right? And I think you're gonna get there. So it's more of a, yep, the lawns, there are people on my lawn and they're not going anywhere. So I gotta teach them how to play the games I want.